Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Junk Be Gone studios for today's edition of the Sports Source. We're happy to have you with us. Last week we tried to spend a good amount of time getting you ready for FAU, and if Tennessee was going to play FAU, we laid out what a challenge that would be and how that's a real team and, quote, as good as anybody left. Now they're in the Final Four. So what are we going to do today? We're not going to say, well, Tennessee lost to a better team. They may have, but they contributed. So we'll talk about how Tennessee contributed to their own demise. We'll talk about, are they going to fix their offense? Is Rick Barnes going to double down with more defense? Rick Barnes, should folks be happy with what they're getting? Should they be saying, well, you know, they got rid of Mark Richt at Georgia. Let's go get us a Kirby Smart. We'll discuss all that stuff. It's going to be a deep dive into Tennessee basketball. Plus, at the end, we got a little bit of Lady Vols and football to cover, too. So let's get into it. Our first segment of today's program brought to you by our friends at Junk Be Gone. It is time for spring cleaning. Junk Be Gone has two specials going on. $299 for a 3-day dumpster rental. $299 for 3-day dumpster rental. That's delivery, that's pickup, and disposal up to 2 tons of debris and junk. Got to be within 30 miles of Knoxville to make that one work, but still $299 for 3 days on the dumpster rental. Or you can order a 2-man job and the Junk Be Gone team comes out and does all the work for you. They load everything up and then they haul it off. Plus, get $25 off if you mention the Sports Source. JunkBeGone.biz to learn more. I use this company all the time. I will be using them in the month of April to do a little spring cleaning at my home as well. All right, let's do some spring cleaning on UT basketball. We've got 3 more analysts waiting in the wings that we're going to bring out here. A lot of rotation today because I want to give everybody plenty of time to talk and give us their views on this stuff. Joining me here first, Vince Ferrara, who was at Madison Square Garden this week, driving all over the country. Thanks for being here, Vince, from 99.1 The Sports Animal. Another one from 99.1 The Sports Animal. Josh Ward back with us. Josh, thanks to you for joining us.
Thank you, John.
You were here, though. You weren't at Madison Square Garden. So you were lazy while he's driving all over the country.
That's right. Less miles, but energized for the show.
Les Miles was usually energized. And right here we've got Mark Pankratz, former UT basketball assistant, former player, Division I player at Milwaukee. Mark, thanks for being here, buddy. I know it's basketball tournament season for you as a coach with your daughters, so thanks for being here. Back on January 15th, I went back and looked at this. I stood right here after the Kentucky game, and we were debating, well, what's the key to beating Tennessee? I said, look, when this season ends, we're going to wind up talking about the fact they shot 3 for 30 or some awful number, and they can't hit, and that's why they lost. Well, here we are. Let's take a look at the numbers. It wasn't 3 for 30, but it was 30%. Florida Atlantic beat you 62-55. Field goal percentage, they outshot you 42-33. From three-point range, you hit 26%. They only hit 29, but they fired up more. They out-rebounded you, which was one of the bigger shocks. There's always the debate. Coaches like to remind people that rebounding is more about effort than it is height and size, and everyone always forgets that until you get out-rebounded by a little team that puts in more effort. Second chance points, they beat you. Points in the paint, they beat you. The complete opposite of the whole get in the mud, we're the bigger, tougher team. Another example that came out of this, it's kind of a storyline of the season, whether it's Kamwa or Josiah Jordan-James. Here one day, gone the next. So 10 of 13 for 27 points. Everyone looked at that and thought, all right, this is what you're going to get from here on out. No, 2 for 9 for 6 points the next night out. Nothing against that guy, but they're just not a consistent team when it comes to scoring. None of them are. And then the Vols allowed in this tournament 55 points and won, 52 points and won, 62 points and lost. Folks, when you can't give up 60 points, that's a tough chore. Very difficult to win as a one-dimensional team in the NCAA tournament. Mark, I'm going to start with you. I go back to the fact that for 2 years now we've been saying, all right, crunch time, when you need a basket, when you're trying to stop a drought, who do you go to? We've wondered. We haven't had a name. I think that's where I would start. What was your big takeaway from this?
Well, I think rebounding was a big one, and the inconsistency. We've seen that all season. People ask me, were we surprised what happened? Not really, because you've seen the pattern throughout the year where we play well for 3 or 4 games and then you lay an egg offensively. whether that's as a team or with some of the individual performances, like you mentioned, Olivier, the inconsistency there, Josiah at times, Tyreek Key. You know, he's a guy that, well, after that Gonzaga game, they were talking about, when I'm asking questions like, is he the real deal? I mean, he's been doing it all preseason, and it just never happened for him this season. He had some open shots in that first half that if we make, the commentators were talking about how great defensively we were in that first half. But really, they were moving the ball and missed some open shots, and we didn't extend that lead at the end of that first half, despite the good defense and them missing shots. So I thought the game was lost in that first half. But the rebounding, long shots, they shot a lot of three-point pointers, which led to long rebounds, and we got outmanned there.
I thought it was interesting that Toby Awaka didn't get in there. He had averaged 14 minutes. From February 4th forward, he was averaging 14 minutes a game. According to Ken Pomeroy, he doesn't have enough rebounds to actually be in the rankings, but his offensive rebounding percentage would put him as number 3 in the country, and he got 1 minute the other night. And I'm sitting there wondering.
Yeah, against Louisiana, Stan Van Gundy was calling him one of the best rebounders in the country.
And he got 1 minute. That was another question I would have. Thoughts on this game?
Rick Barnes said that was because, and Greg Polinsky kind of alluded to it too, because they were so athletic and spread you out with the 4 guards that it really wasn't the best matchup for him. All I know is they were out-rebounded and they could use a guy that could really rebound. So.
I would think in the second half I would have been trying something. Let's see.
Well, but the second half, I mean, what was the score? We were up most of the half. Let's not allude to the fact that we got, blown out. I mean, we were in the game.
I didn't say that.
We had the chance to make shots. We're up, with 5-6 minutes left? I mean, it wasn't like that they came out and just dominated us from start to finish.
No.
So I think what happened was Euros got us off to a good start, and I think we stuck with Euros a little bit longer. Euros is better on the perimeter and switching out on ball screens as they're trying to extend you out with 4 guards, and that's why he played Euros instead of Awaka. Now, I do think if our identity is interior and we're going to pound the ball inside, then we've got to have the ability to put our emphasis or what we do offensively and make them guard us, not us change what we do to guard them.
I just know that over the last, 10, 12 games from February 4th on, you didn't have another bad matchup for him. He was averaging 14 minutes. So I guess it was just a horrible, horrible matchup. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I would say the issues that we've seen from this team, and Mark already alluded to the inconsistencies, game to game, player to each player and the team overall, but also the inability to drive. I mean, to me, they didn't drive the lane enough, even with Zakai Ziegler. They didn't have enough guys that did it. Then without him, it was really an issue for them. And with teams extending beyond the three-point line and up in the chin of the Tennessee guards, Santiago Vescovi has to shoot from the logo. And that's why he can make some of those occasionally, but that's not their best offense. It makes it so much difficult when they can't drive the lane, when they can't just feed the post and force double teams to create. All those things hurt them. And then another thing was something the players talked about going in was they got to keep the FAU's guards in front of them, not let them penetrate. And that's what happened. They broke down Tennessee's defense and getting past the guards. Ziegler could have helped you with that. But then you kick it out from the penetration. Now you have guys leaping at three-point shooters. Now you have 2 guys out of position because they're moving the ball well. And so the things we've seen from them really surfaced.
Yeah, how many Sundays this basketball season, February on especially, did we say, well, if Olivier is locked in, I guess I'm using some terminology from postgame, but if you get a good performance from him, Jimmy Himes several weeks ago shared the number of if you get more than 10 points from Josiah. So the senior's leading. If that happens, then you get really good results, and you saw that against Duke.
You saw it against Texas, if you go back to that game.
But so the analysis was correct, but too often it didn't show back up. So the frustrating point would be after a historical win against Duke, considering the name, and it gets you to the Sweet 16, and the questions about Tennessee being a dirty basketball team, and the thought internally how that could help Tennessee focus. And then you see that result where during that 18-2 run, FAU, the 9 seed, looks like the more poised basketball team. That's going to be a frustrating part of how it finishes.
Let me you bring up the 18-2 run. Let me put up this team has lived and died by droughts all year. Droughts, I should say. I added them all up. In the first half, FAU, as Mark said, they couldn't take advantage of them. They were missing their own shots. But you went from 12:07 to 8:27, 0 points. You went from 3:17 to the end of the half, 0 points. Now, they only gained 5 points on you, but still. Second half, you had 0 points from the 19:27 mark to the 16:39 mark. They cut your lead by 2 again. Then you got 2 points between 12:52 and 6:11. Guys, those droughts equaled 17 minutes and 6 seconds. That's a half of you not playing offense. It's hard to win a game when you don't score but 2 points over 17 minutes. And in that time, they gave up 27 points. That's 27-2 over those droughts. It's hard to win that way.
And John, if you do the numbers from the 3:17 that they didn't score to when they got that bucket from Adu at 6:11, they only scored 14 points in 17 minutes and 6 seconds. So when they are getting offense, it's not much. It really has been an issue for this team all season.
Well, we have slower wings, slower guards. Meshack's not there yet. He improved a ton this year.
Yeah.
Without him, I mean, he improved.
Well, especially getting thrown into the point guard role as well.
Absolutely. But with slower, bigger wings, Vescovi's not going to get by anybody. Josiah's not going to get by any. So our motion offense leads to Tyreek Key's not going to get by any. A lot of contested jump shots. And against better teams, more athletic teams, without Zakai wearing us down, we're relying on the guys to make quality reads and then make tough twos consistently. And that's just hard because we don't do a lot of play calls. We run more motion offense. And it makes our offense very hard, and it puts a lot on the pressure of the guys to just make contested shots. And that's why we have so many times throughout the year where you just go in those stints of lack of points.
Well, we're going to show you a little bit later. I thought this was interesting. It kind of gets to what Mark's talking about. Well, I don't want to give away the question, but basically we'll show you FAU came in with an identity. They've got a plan. We'll show you the shot chart from this game, and then we'll show you the Tennessee shot chart, and it's what you're talking about. It's just, I don't know, throw something up. Wherever you get a slight opening, just fire it up there. Whereas FAU said, we're only shooting in the paint, and we're shooting from 3. I don't want any of this 2-point jump shot crap, which you'll see Tennessee looks like a shotgun blast across the shot chart. Any final thoughts in this segment you want to throw out? Anything else big that stood out to you? I thought you mentioned the seniors, 14 of 50 combined from the floor.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah, that creates a conversation, I think, for later because of the accomplishments they have, but what wasn't there too often.
Yeah. And then you have to wonder, and we'll talk about this next week on the show. I don't have time for everything today. We'll talk about, you got 4 seniors who all have some eligibility left. They all went through senior day, but do any of them decide we're going to stick around and come back because we have unfinished business? Does anybody transfer out? Who's a flight risk after this year? And what about Julian Phillips? So we got a lot more to discuss in the weeks ahead on basketball. When we come back, well, let me go ahead and tell you what's coming up in today's show. Vols problems, we'll dig a little deeper into that in this next segment, including that whole locked-in thing that Josh referenced. We'll dig into what they talked about after the game. Also, fair or unfair. I'm going to sit down and throw out some really ugly critiques, and Mark can tell me if I'm being fair or unfair. I play devil's advocate today. Should be fun. UT's offense versus the Elite 8 offenses. I'm going to show you a chart that will explain why you're not in the Elite 8 and they were. We'll deep dive on Rick Barnes. We'll talk Lady Vols football and much, much more. So when we come back, as I said, we're going to discuss Tennessee's statements that, well, we weren't as locked in. How are you not locked in for a Sweet 16 game? Or is that just sports? Come on back, we'll discuss.